one. And it will be led by the acting secretary. One. And it will be this is a draft led by the acting secretary. One agenda. And then the next item says discussion. The second item or the third item says briefing on Parliament's draft 2021-22 annual performance plan and budget by the acting secretary. Then discussions. What I usually prefer, I'm bouncing this with you members, that what I usually prefer, because it's one person who's going to make presentations, they don't differ that much, that we allow the acting secretary to do both presentation, and as she does that, we note issues that we want to raise. And then when we discuss both presentations, the first quarter report and the performance report and the annual plan and budget. I'm bouncing this with you, honorable members.
Good idea.
For that time. Pardon?
It's a good idea.
Okay. Honorable Sula, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah. Supported.
My brother, team, sharp.
Yes, sharp, Zinto.
Sure. Cindy, let me take this opportunity while the co-chairperson is still being assisted by IT, Honorable Mabi, so that we don't take on your time today on a Friday, honorable members, and thank you for responding to this meeting. Before I declare the meeting officially open, are we co-reading, Cindy?
Ms. Mahlangu, we can proceed with 5 of our members present. So we've got Mr. Khadebe, Mr. Singh, Mme Mahlangu, Mme Motwe, Mr. Hai, Mr. Brautaseth, Mr. Moletsane and Mme Mahlo have sent apologies. They both had doctor's appointments. So we can proceed with the meeting, but when we get to the last item, the adoption of the minutes and the reports, we might have to postpone that if we don't vote yet.
Okay, thank you very much. I declare the meeting officially open, and thank you very much, members, for availing yourself on a Friday afternoon. This really encourages one. We know that this is one of the committees that has been suffering and has been struggling for meetings, and it's only upon us as members to make sure that we prioritize it and make sure that we meet. But over and above that, I know there's a will from you members, but you have other responsibilities, which those responsibilities you cannot postpone because they are governed by legislations. Thank you very much. Do we have apologies, Cindy?
Yes, Mme Mahlangu. We only have from Ms. Mahlo and Mr. Moletsane, both of whom were sick.
Mr. Moletsane also is not here.
Yes, he's not here. He's ill. Mme Mahlo may join later, but she's just from a doctor's appointment. So she's on her way still.
Okay. Can I request that we adopt the agenda as I presented it to you, with the understanding that the last item being the consideration of the committee's report? Is that the one? Yeah. The adoption, consideration of the committee report. Which one? Minutes.
We have got minutes. We have got minutes. We've got 2 outstanding reports to adopt.
Okay. we can adopt the agenda, but with the consideration that if we are at the point where we are expected to adopt and we still don't correct, we will not do that. Can I be assisted by the members?
Yes, Chair.
Here we're dealing about procedural issue. Yes, who's that?
Kaiso.
Kaiso, thank you.
Yes, Chair. I want to move for adoption of the agenda.
Thank you, Honorable Kaiso. Honorable Steve.
It's fine, Chair. I think we can move on.
Okay. Thank you very much. Without any waste of time, can I request the Ms. Chawa, the Acting Secretary to Parliament, to deal with the briefing on the first quarter of 2020-21 on Parliament's performance. Ms. Chawa.
Thanks very much, Chairperson, and good afternoon, honorable members and colleagues. I do also want to present an apology from Mr. Castle, the Secretary to the National Assembly and Deputy Acting Secretary for CORE. Honorable members, I just want to say that a lot of what I'm going to present is what you have seen. The second part of our presentation is really what we had presented with you, which is the APP of 2020-2021 going forward. I'm sorry, 2021-2022. This that I'm presenting is obviously the performance of this current financial year first quarter. Yes. Documents were shared with the members. So I'm going to ask that I will just highlight where there are certain points that we think must be brought to the attention of the committee. And the second part of the agenda item, which is the 2021-2022, I will ask Ravi Moodley to talk to it as the head of SMG, so that at least we just divide duties today. So the first presentation, Honorable Chair and the members, is just to say, how have we fared in the first quarter? Remember that we had to table this APP because it had been adopted and passed by the two houses on 31st of May last year. So in the quarter that we were starting to implement, part of what we did not have is an appropriated budget, although we had allocation for each one of the divisions. And in that APP, we had obviously had to wait for the revision of the budget and was finally tabled in 2020 July. So what we have in this presentation is against the 16 indicators that we are tracking for the quarter, 10 have quarterly targets that we measured in quarter one, 6 have annual indicators only that were not tracked for this period. Of the 10 measures tracked, 8 indicators were met. And for quarter one, general performance is at 80%. And again, it should be within the context of the pandemic and the lockdown, where certain things were not necessarily possible to be done in the normal manner. Can we go to the next slide? This is the normal slide that we share with you members, just to concentrate on 2 areas. The red, which shows programs targets that we did not meet, and of course the gray showing you all the annual targets, which we have indeed taken on board what you indicated that we should try and present a narrative against the annual targets, and we are showing it in this presentation. The next slide is a summary that we are in terms of implementation of our APP at 80%, and that's just a breakdown of the indicators that met their target and the indicators that did not meet their targets and indicators that are not applicable that are annual. Can we go to the next slide? As I said, the budget for this quarter, there's nothing dramatic worth it, as honorable members will see. That at that point in time, we just worked on, the Act does allow that we can use 45% of the budget, if not appropriated, up until it's appropriated. So we are just showing in terms of just that pie chart, the allocations per program of the programs that we have. And of course, still the big budget driver there hasn't changed. It's still the associated services at 151 million and 126 million is core business, and then direct charges at 120. This is for the quarter. So for the budget of the quarter, we're sitting at 536,322,000. You will see, honorable members, that as we go on, some slides might be monotonous, and I'm not going to talk to those because it just tells you that as per what we had allocated for this particular quarter, we were envisaging that that's going to be used 100%. So this slide shows that in terms of financial performance, we just did a straight line. It is only in the Q2, but we have also included here later on our share, or if colleagues remind me, that we have included a slide that shows you that if everything was normal, this is how we spent in the past year without COVID, or this is how we spent in the past year without any disruption. What this slide shows you is, here's what's budgeted for the quarter in terms of the programs, the main divisions, altogether counting up to 536 million. The actuals are similar to what is expected. And of course, what we're going to show you a little bit later on is a slide that indicates some bit of differences in terms of what has been spent. So we do say that two budget lekgotlas were held. I think that's what's important here, is to say to members, we held a budget lekgotla with the executive authority, and in that they agreed. We were discussing how that should be reprioritized, how the budget should be reprioritized, because this was a new term of office, and the fact that at that time, the only budget that then passed was appropriated was done by the 30th of June, subsequent to the special adjustment on the 24th of June. So these are all your, shall I say, estimates of expenditure. Can we move on? So all throughout, I will not really waste your time on the budget itself, because it gives you the same figures. It doesn't give you variances. It moves from the fact that this was an allocation of the Q1, where you'll only see the movement will be when we report on Q2. Can we move on? As per practice, we provide you with the explanatory notes for the budget. I will not read through them because there is nothing untoward. Can we move? Similarly, we have provided you a budget allocation per economic classification. As is pattern, it's normal that the biggest part of our budget goes into compensation of employees, then followed by compensation of members, then of course goods and no, before that it's actually members, goods and services, which is entitlements and facilities, and then of course goods and services of APP currently for the quarter was actually 15.9 million, meaning that when we report to you, having allocated budget properly after the special adjustment, you will then look at, has the APP budget been moving, and if it hasn't, where is money spent, and if there are savings, what savings are those and how can they be used? Can we move on? So like I said, similarly, even under this, the economic classification, there is nothing untoward. I'm not going to waste time on that. Can we move on? I just want to go back to that slide. I just want to say one of the things that the committee asked us, and we just want to be sure that this works. We were asked, because normally we don't give you projections and actuals and totals and annual budget. We always have given you the budget and the actual, and of course the variance. But in the last meeting, you asked us to provide a column. So you'll see there's a new column there of the projections against the actuals. It's an additional column, which we thought, yes, we will put it in here. I presume it will assist the committee to see on a monthly basis when we project by the end of the quarter, are our projections aligned to the actuals? If they're not aligned to the actuals, what are the different expenditures that we didn't incur or what are those that we have actually moved into the forward, or in fact, where are we underspending? I suppose that's what the column will try and show you over time. So we will see how this new addition assists the committee to scrutinize the expenditure against a whole range of things in terms of the economic classifications, as well as against the various main divisions. Can you move on? Those are the net budget narrative, as we always give to yourself. I'm sure we will respond if there are questions. That's straightforward, honestly, nothing untoward. I will not waste your time on that. Shall we move again? The following section is really to look at the various programs and how they have performed. Program 1, they had a total of 4 indicators. All indicators, 4 of them achieved 100%. Can we just look at that, which it is the number of analytical reports. As we said in the earlier presentation I shared with the committee, the PBO, this was a transitional APP. The PBO will be reporting on their own APP going forward. So next year, or even this year, next year, of course, because there's a transitional period, the PBO will actually be having their own presentation, I presume. So we will not be including it. You will see when my colleague speaks on the next presentation. This is just an outline to say to members, these were the type of procedural reports provided. No, I'm sorry, this is the next level of the program 1, which is strategic leadership and governance, which looks at the OISD on procedural, strategic, and legal advice to support, produced to support ISDs. And this is just measurement of the turnaround, that turnaround of 7 days was achieved. So there's no variance, there is nothing untoward here, it's straightforward. And that contributes to the 100% of program 1 performance. Can you move on?
Richard, there's a noise, I think, from where Ms. Jawa is.
Noise from my side?
I think so, because you're the only one who's the mic.
Okay, let me just check.
I was trying to check whose mic is on, but you can continue. If it's from your side, Ms. Jawa, please.
Yes, I've just identified where it comes from.
No, we have to switch off our mics. I was just trying to check. The co-chairperson is still struggling to come in. You can continue, madam.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, we have sorted out the background noise that was going. I'm sorry about that. Can we move on to the next program performance? Program 2 on administration. Of the 2 indicators met, only one was on target, and the one not on target. And we do explain later on what it is. This is a program where we offer training to members, and this is the programs of training. Obviously, as a result of the lockdown, we were not able to pursue those programs. It is the same discussion, I think, that was raised in this committee to say some universities are trying to do an online program offering. So that's the route we're going to take. As a result of that, that delivery against the target is delayed. Can we move on? Reports, this is the sector report submitted to the Speakers Forum, and that is a deliverable that is achieved and nothing untoward, nothing different from that. Can we move on? Program, can we go back? Program 2, it is also the budget, as I said, that there's honestly nothing untoward and nothing different. There's nothing I can flag in that on the slide. Let's go to program 3. Under core business, we have 1 indicator not met. We actually have 3 indicators as indicated, and 1 that is not met, and we'll talk about it later on. Can we move on? We've had challenges with the change of work, the nature of work in Parliament. This particular performance indicator achieved a negative 10.2%. against what was set as the first quarter target. And we do provide the reasons for variation there. And we also provide the likely intervention that we're putting in place. We think this is an area that is going to obviously make us have to focus on because of the changing nature of the way in which we work now, interpretation, Hansard production, and as well as reporting, which is limited by the technology advancement or the modifications that Parliament didn't have in the first place, because we never had any anticipation of a pandemic that would shut down the precinct. Can I move on? There's the service charter that we always share with members, and those red graphs are they tally with the first slide that I shared with yourselves earlier on, which shows you the sub-indicators that were not met under the service charter. And I have explained what those are. We do have mitigations. The acting deputy secretary there, as well as the area KIS, which is research, are looking at ways in which we can try and improve the tools of trade that do drive that area of operation. Can you go on? With respect to those gray, the status of the gray on the targets, obviously we have set out the targets as outlined on the slide. And what we're showing you there, progress is, because these are survey-based performance indicators, we have now issued the terms of reference. As I speak, field work will be starting once the companies have been offered their purchasing orders, and a survey on the level of participation, of people's participation on parliamentary issues will actually be produced as we normally do. We often get the reports towards the end of November, which is a draft, and then we get by March, in fact, February, we get a complete report on two areas, the communications and public awareness survey that's conducted independently, and then the next one is obviously on client satisfaction. So we are giving you a status there on our members as it was requested of us to do so. Move on. Next slide. The next slide is obviously the budget that I indicated. There is nothing untoward. Following there is program 4, which is support services, which has got 5 indicators. Target 1, that's been achieved. And can you move on, please? We're going on to program 4 now. Move the slide, Cindy. Yes, thank you. On this slide, we also indicate that the targets that have been achieved, and of course the 4 targets are annual, and I've spoken to those. Can you move on? That's an explanatory note of what we sharing with the committee to say planning is underway, and of course the report does come on later on. And we also are talking about the fact that we are actually going to include a shift into the 6th Parliament. One of the shifts we're going to include is this client satisfaction survey. We have decided some of it is time bound, and in fact we can have a continuous collection of data on the levels of satisfaction of members. It is the survey that we provide and get a sample from members, sample from stakeholders, and ask them first for members on the services that we offer to members, the levels of satisfaction thereof. We realize that one of the deficits that we have in that survey is because it's latent response to a survey, we tend to get, by the time we collect data, members might have forgotten their experience of the service they have received from administration. So there are 2 areas that are going to change, and my colleagues will talk about it when we do the second presentation. We're going to try and do continuous gathering of satisfaction. For instance, ICT, each time they provide a service, they have an email or a note that they send to say, almost like, were you satisfied with the support you provided? And they have a help desk that collates all the data. We're going to introduce that level so that even during the year, we keep on picking up information that talks about the extent to which members are happy with our services. And that type of raw data will even be used against the survey that we conduct annually, almost like a mirror, a reflection of what we're seeing, what we are saying, and what those who depend on our services are saying. So the stakeholder does test the internal, external audiences, and then of course we try as much as we can. We publicize the survey on social media and so on and so forth. We are going to do a campaign also to try and generate a lot of interest. A few years we've realized that a lot of members do not necessarily respond to our surveys, but we also realized that there's sometimes last year we had a lot of surveys and there might have been survey fatigue amongst members. And that's an area that we think is very important because in turn it will change and influence the usability, the way in which you experience our services and also raise a question of the usability of our services towards supporting members. Can we move on? Yes, you can move the slide. Okay, yeah, move the slide. This one, it's straightforward on our members. It's the extent to which ICT interventions are received by members and their ratings. And like I say, ICT interventions are quite consistent, primarily because it's a tool or it's a support or it's a service that members depend on almost entirely. And currently, all we are talking about is ICT. Even where there are connectivity issues, it's ICT, but obviously providing tools of trade, ensuring that members access information through the tools of trade. They have that continuous feedback onto the work they are doing that enables members to deliver on their mandate. Can you go on? Can you move the slide? I have referred to the client satisfaction service. The client satisfaction survey, which I'm saying we are on track. We have actually gone through the TORs, done the specifications. We are now just to a point, and field work begins. We do a whole campaign to ensure that there is a response that is going to come in relation to the questions that we're placing. Then the one on strategic objective 1.7 is the level at which there is job satisfaction, recruitment, as well as training of staff. That target is driven by HR, who do have their targets annually, but on a quarterly basis, they do have the outputs of the work they do with respect to the talent management index that they compile, that has got variables that, sub-variables that contribute to the index itself, or sub-indices, if one were to put it. The budget is not anything different from all the other budgets. And I know to members, honestly, there's nothing much you can raise on this budget. It doesn't show you any major shifts, primarily because of the environment within which we're operating. Those are the notes of the budget that I will not go through because there's nothing untoward, no anomaly, and it sort of adds up. Associated services, there is a total indicators were 2 and the targets were met. This is an area where we provide members with the refunds and show that they are reimbursed in good time. Turnaround time, as they have it on the next slide. Yes, thanks very much. Turnaround time is 2.5. This area has been able to almost relocate their whole operations from the precinct to ensure that members are actually reimbursed on a time-hours basis. irrespective of the volumes that they got or the challenges that they got in the past, as we're moving into lockdown, that area has been able to achieve what they had set out to achieve. And then, of course, we have the transfers to parties, which is a straightforward transfer that members, at least no party has complained to date. The only parties that might complain is those that do not provide us with their quarterly audited reports, because once they, not audited, their quarterly financial reports, because once we do not receive your quarterly reports, we do not give you the next tranche. So we keep the money up until you give us your quarterly financial report. That's just as per our policy, and it's just good governance. We can move on. The figures are basically the same. Okay. Can you move on quickly, colleagues? And of course, following that, it's the notes that we normally attach to the report. Can you move the slides and move again? Move the slides again. There's one slide that I would like to pull back, to pull in, Cindy, if you have it, either you, Cindy, or Cindy Mtembu. There's a slide that talks to, no, that's fine, no. After this, after the directions. There's a slide I've asked that we should share with members because I don't think it was in the pack. It just shows last year, this time, what was the expenditure under normal circumstances, and it will show you that that's the one. If you just can make it bigger, I don't know if members can see it because it's not in their report. We thought, thank you so much. We thought what we should do, just compare last year, this quarter, and this year, this quarter, the financial year, I mean. You will see, honorable members, that by the quarter last year, 1990 to 2020, the transfers to parties were showing a negative variance, and the capital expenditure. However, the rest of the expenditure was almost like on target with reference to the quota as allocated, or shall I say with reference to the projections of the quota of the past financial year. What am I saying? I'm saying this is going to be a good source slide for yourselves. When we come back to present the quarter two, we will then compare where budget is moving and where it's not moving. Obviously, with respect to compensation to members and employees, that is static, is known. However, if we look at the categories like goods and services on annual performance plan, members of the committee will have to compare whether there is expenditure against our APP. If there isn't, what are the reasons? I can say immediately that we are going to show and to see a lot of difference with respect to the entitlements of members with respect to travel. We are going to see a lot of difference between within the oversight and public participation. So you see that committees with who are not necessarily doing public participation in the manner in which we're doing it, there will definitely be an under expenditure. However, the CFO also indicated that, remember that we have had a 80 million revised downwards. So we are going to even have to show you where the 80 million has impacted, if it has impacted significantly. And as far as we know, from what we were looking at, it's not impacted significantly at all. But this is an area where I think this committee would like to see the changes and the comparisons backwards, because it will give you an indication of, are we underspending? If we are there areas in Parliament where there is need for more budget? Like, for instance, modernization of technologies. If committees are going to stay on hybrid or virtual, what are the things that we're going to have to invest in with respect to our connectivity, modernization, and converting some of the committee rooms on the precinct so that they take up the hybrid model for both the houses? So these are some of the things we're looking at. And then, of course, working at home with members and staff that are vulnerable, that have got comorbidities, we will have to reinforce the working at home spaces for staff that have comorbidities, cannot come onto the precinct even when the dust settles. And that means there will have to be some form of budget moved around there. But these are the discussions and the presentations that we'll share with yourselves. And then, of course, when we do environments, we do environments properly. We do them through the approval of the Executive Authority in line with the FMPPLA. Chairperson, I'm finished with the first quarter presentation. I am going just to break monotony. I've asked my colleague Ravi Mutli, who is the SMG head of strategy and management, to deal with a second presentation, which speaks to 2021-2022. So Ravi Mutli will take through the members onto the next presentation. Then, of course, CFO will add any matters that relate to the budget that he would like to us to add, and I'm sure he will also talk about the AG and the current audit status of our audit, so that we just break monotony and I don't have to talk alone all the time. Thank you very much, Chief. If I ask Mr. Mutli to come on board.
Okay. Thank you, Acting Secretary, for the opportunity. Chairperson, honorable members.
Background sound.
There's a background sound that's filtering, Ravi. Okay. I'm going to switch off my.
Yeah, I don't think it's. It's fine. Is it fine? Okay. Thank you, Chairperson, honourable members of Parliament, colleagues. I'm going to take you through our presentation on the 6th Parliament, the forward-looking APP, the draft APP of 21-22. It's important to note, I think, that this would be the first APP following the 6th Parliament strategic plan. And so it has new direction that we're taking. And I think in the slides, what I'm going to focus on is the key points of change and the major changes that we have been making. So so in terms of that first slide, all we're saying is that strategic planning has 5 key components, from policy development, planning, then your operational planning and focus on resource allocation, your implementation modalities, and then the cycle has to work that we have to report back and evaluate what is working and what is not. So that comes from your typical guidelines, guidelines from government, and that is what we're following. Next slide, please. Over here, I don't want to go into too much detail, but I want to say when the 6th Parliament, with the inception of the 6th Parliament, there was quite a significant process that we ran from the development of our policy priorities and the tabling of our, all the way to the tabling of our strategic plan. We've already presented to the committee both our policy priorities and the strategic plan of the 6th Parliament. And this is completing the process by showing you the development of the first APP of the 6th Parliament. So there was quite a process that we ran. I've just put in the key steps along the way. However, it's important to note that the tabling of the 21-22 APP and budget was on the 12th of June of this year. Next slide, please. Okay. Honourable members, what I want to remind, in our policy priorities document and in our strategic plan, one of the first things we developed was a strategic map for the 6th Parliament, which shows the relationship between what is the impact of Parliament, what is Parliament's outcomes, what are its key outputs, activities, and inputs. Your policy priorities and strategic plan focused on the first couple of rows. At the APP level, all I want to say is what we're focusing is on that blue highlighted block, that it's some of the key modalities that we need to do in order to implement that strategic plan. So I'll cover that in detail in subsequent slides. So for now, we can move on. Next slide. Okay, I think also as part of a backdrop, it's important to understand that there are new government guidelines for strategic plans and APPs, and the 6th Parliament Strategic Plan and APP have followed these new guidelines. It included new methods of doing strategic analysis and tools such as SWOT, results-based management, balanced scorecard. It's also very important to note that the new guidelines create a better separation of what we call strategy development or strategic intent and strategic execution or implementation modalities. So now the strategic plan focuses on 15-year impact and 5-year outcome variables. And now APPs carry implementation around outputs and associate information, which is what that results map was saying earlier. There's also a lot of emphasis and new requirements for operational plans, which are in new guidelines. So we followed these new implementation guidelines. So the Sixth Parliament strategy and APPs are taking on a new sort of format. Next slide, please. Okay. Also, something else which is new. Our current budget program structure has got 5 programs. The new APP of the Sixth Parliament has got a new program budget structure. So we're reducing the number of programs from 5 to 3. And the key change is that your new program 1 would be administration, which would have the offices of the Executive Authority, the Office of the Secretary, corporate and support services. Just an example of that, like for example, the Human Resources Division, IT Division, etc., are typically things which would fall under corporate and support services area. So that would all be in program 1. Then your program 2 focuses, we call it a legislation and oversight program. This typically covers the core business of Parliament. It would have the National Assembly, the NCOP, the emphasis on public participation and external relations, shared services as relating to the core business of Parliament. So typically things like your research, your legal service, all of those kind of paradigms would fall under that shared services of program 2. And then it would also contain things like the sectoral parliaments and joint business, so the business of the two houses acting jointly. Your program 3 is simply an associated services and transfer payments program, and so it has direct transfers, members' facilities, transfers to political parties, etc. That program typically would not have performance information, but would simply be a transfer of money, which is normally handled there. Okay, next slide. Just in keeping with that, the new APP, we set out quite clearly that there's the parliamentary administration, but there are also other offices reporting to the Executive Authority. These include the Parliamentary Budget Office, the Legislative Support Sector, your Office of the Institution Supporting Democracy, and the Treasury Advice Office, which has still yet to be fully established. These offices need to be handled separately from the parliamentary administration, and so because in terms of as you're well aware that for example the PBO has got its own independent act. The PBO director is an accounting officer requiring a transfer of payment from Parliament. So the new APP reflects these modalities. So these offices are flagged, and they're handling their office flagged in the new APP. Okay. Move on to the next slide, please. Okay, this slide, honorable members, I'd like to spend some time on. I think for us, one of the significant new directions that we are taking with the Sixth Parliament, it comes from the realization that Parliament is an institution, is a service-based institution. So in a simple way, we don't build houses, we don't build hospitals, we don't manufacture anything. We provide services. And the realization is that we needed to have measures which were useful to service-based industries in order to put in the APP. It would create better alignment between Parliament as a whole and the parliamentary administration. So just a graph that we've put there is that typically service industries use client satisfaction feedback to determine the usefulness of their services. It's also how they look to improve their services. And in that graph, we are showing some of the typical client service measures which are used out there in industry. So I'm not going to go through each one in detail. However, the majority of client-based businesses or service industries use Net Promoter Scores as their measures. And the second most well-used measures are client satisfaction measures. There's a couple of others, but those are probably more suitable for industries where they earn revenue, etc. So we looked at these in detail, and it was decided that for the 6th Parliament, a lot of our measures are going to move to client satisfaction, where I think a simple way to put it, to us, it's not good enough to say whether a research paper was done in 8 days. If we don't talk about how useful was that paper, what was its quality, and measure a couple other dimensions, and get feedback, client feedback as to how satisfied they are with the service, we will always have products rather than a service. So this new approach to the APP is looking to move our measures in that direction. Next slide, please. This is just simply showing that Parliament has started the process in the past of doing certain client satisfaction surveys. So it's not like we're starting it from scratch. We just want to move all our service offerings towards this direction. Next slide, please. Then I just want to focus on quickly all our details on the APP. However, in this presentation, what I want to show you, what is our key thrusts going forward. So, number one, I'm going to break it up per program. So if I look at key focus areas per program, in program 1, the administration, there's a couple of major things that we need to do or need to change in the 6th Parliament. So number one, we need to develop a new business model for the parliamentary service to address the future way of work. So it's the only way we're going to improve. So that's an important strategic imperative for us. There's a need for us to redesign and optimize our core and support businesses using technology, upskilling and reskilling programs, and once again, embedding modern technology in the way we do things. It's also important for us to move away from generalist skill sets. It's required for us as the parliamentary administration to move forward, that we need to develop specialist skills programs, specialist skills, specialist expertise, and that is the way of the organization continuously improving. Also, there's a need to embrace continuous innovation and improvements in terms of our processes. And there's a nice terminology that I'm using there, which we call allowing for co-creation and value adding. Co-creation is where processes are designed together with your customers. So in this case, parliamentary administration work with members of parliament to continuously improve our processes. So that loop is quite important to us. We also recognize the need, and a key thrust of this APP is also to take our current service offerings and integrate it in a collaborative manner, where you as members of parliament get an integrated, holistic service rather than separate offerings from different parts of the parliamentary administration. And then another one is obviously the need to improve our facilities, our tools of trade, our policies around remote working. So these are in principle the key strategic thrusts in program 1, which I want to point out to members. Can we move to the next slide, please? Okay. here, I just want to talk about, I think members have been realizing under this COVID pandemic how important technology is in enabling work. So this diagram is simply showing that there are certain key levels of digital maturity that an organization needs to be to. So what we're doing is we're embarking on a path of moving from your traditional way of working to there's the point where you start embedding technology in your processes, but then the ultimate point is where you've done a full digital transformation of your organization, where technology is not just an enabler, it actually is an integral way of how you do business. So there's a whole full ICT plan around this. However, this slide is just showing us the path that we want to take. Next slide, please. Now, I'm not going to go through each measure in detail. I've already spoken about we moving to client satisfaction, but just as an example. So, for example, when we talk about ICT services, we'd want to look at your percentage of clients satisfied with services. There would be surveys which measure key dimensions of satisfaction. It's the same with our institutional support service or our facilities. It would be the same. The other one relates to HR, but it's once again using survey results, especially from those of our clients, which are members of parliament, in order to evaluate our services. So that's the thrust of the new APP. I'm not going to go specifically into the budget, but these are the budget associated with Program 1. Next slide, please. Okay, then the strategic thrust for Program 2. So Program 2, like I said, is legislation and oversight. So the emphasis is on a new programming framework with a shift towards constituency, committee, and plenary weeks. And the new framework also needs to schedule joint committee and joint intersectoral work. So we're expecting one of the things of the new of the Sixth Parliament to relook at the program of Parliament and work towards that. Next slide, please. Also, an emphasis on Program 2 is this thrust is member capacity building. So it's important. I think there's a realization that there are many role players involved in some level in member capacitation, and there's a need to integrate your different capacity building programs, and also to make our programs useful to members would direct member feedback as to the usefulness of these programs. So that's another thrust of the APP. Next slide, please. Okay. Then also in Program 2, we've classified certain things under research and information. So one of the some of the key initiatives which need to be done is the development of a 3-year research plan to support an oversight plan. It's no use that you have a research, you have oversight, and then you don't have a coherent research plan to support that oversight plan. So they need to be integrated and follow one from the other. There's the focus on coordinating your various information providers into an integrated seamless delivery model, so that you don't get fragmented information offerings. It comes across as a holistic service. We're focusing on access to information services. Then there's a focus on improving collaboration with other partners in the information space. These could be anything from Stats SA to there's a number of role players other than the parliamentary administration who are useful in the information chain. So forging partnerships with those is becoming an important aspect. We're looking to augment the information dissemination process. So basically, this focuses on improved packaging of our information, creating information simplicity, and a focus on ease of use for use of our information services for members of parliament. We're looking to focus on institutional standards and quality management processes around our information services. So all in all, these are key strategic thrusts around research and information, which is a focus of the new APP. Next slide, please. I don't want to go into the specific results because I think all of these I've mentioned are client satisfaction surveys. So just move to the next slide, please. Okay. Another imperative for us, so a key focus area of the APP is the area of public involvement. So there's an emphasis on the delivery of public education and information programs, and the need for virtual public meetings, e-hearings, e-petitions to take public involvement to the next stage. There's a focus on cooperation with other partners and stakeholders in your public in that space. There is a need to coordinate programs with that of constituency officers, and also an emphasis on creating efficiency around this. So the consolidation of current programs, capacities, and resources to work together in a more integrated and productive fashion. Next slide, please. Okay, I won't discuss the budget. Next one. Okay, your program 3, I think the emphasis on program 3, so it's about facilities and financial support for political parties. This program is typically just has funding. It does not have performance information. I think it's remained relatively unchanged from your members' facilities, your leadership, administrative, and constituency support, and transfers to, it also needs to have transfers to areas like the PBO there. So there's no real performance information there, and we can't say there's any strategic thrust in that direction. Okay, next slide, please. Just go further. I'm not going to discuss the budget. Okay, I think this one, what we want to cover is, we termed it political activities on institutional oversight plan. However, I think the easiest way for me to explain this is that for the 6th Parliament strategy to be successful, we need the following. There are inputs required by members of Parliament as provided by the Parliamentary Service, and these are put forth in the draft annual performance plan. However, there are activities performed by members in constituencies, committees, and plenaries. As service targets of the Parliamentary Service is captured in the APP, we also need a plan to measure performance targets of members, because the Parliamentary Service does not provide the ultimate outcomes or impacts of Parliament. It's actually delivered through members of Parliament. So it is important that these activities are also captured in an institutional oversight plan to ensure that your parliamentary outcomes are met. What I will cover, just move to the next slide, please. Okay, so the focus of the oversight plan, whereas I think when I showed you the strategy map earlier, for the parliamentary administration, the bottom row was in blue, was where the blue block was. If you look at the focus of the oversight plan and the work of members, the level it covers is that middle where it's also highlighted in blue, which talks about constituency oversight work, committee oversight work, and plenary oversight work. So ultimately, this oversight plan focuses on these activities, which are the delivery of members of Parliament. I think just move on to the next slide. I'll cover certain key elements of that oversight plan. So some of the key legs of this oversight plan is, for example, there's been quite a write-up around this. However, it goes from your chapter one of setting oversight focus areas for each year, determining oversight activities, appropriate oversight structures, coordinating and program, capacity building, information and research plan matched to that oversight plan. all the way to, so there's 11 legs of this. Now, this oversight plan would obviously not sit in the APP. It is something which goes complementary with the APP, and the ownership for that would be ultimately with the executive authority. But it's important that we're mentioning it over here that for there to be alignment between the parliamentary administration and Parliament as a whole, it is important to create that coherence between the two, which is why we mention it in this presentation. Thanks. Next slide. Okay, I think for me that covers the key thrust of the APP. I think the next steps I'll just cover briefly so we've now reached that point where we've got our policy priorities, our strat plan, our APPs. So we've done the full strategy development or strategic planning. The big steps for us and our focus going forward is on the implementation modalities of the strat plan and the APP. These cover briefly some of the key strategic initiatives, some of which I've mentioned in this presentation already. The need to align certain structures. Our focus is on strengthening collaboration between various partners, a relook and rebalancing of resource allocation to ensure that the Sixth Parliament strategy and this APP can be implemented, and ensuring that the right skills development and capacity. Just in the same way that financial resources are needed for some things, it's important to have the right skills and capacity in order to implement that strategy, and that's our emphasis over the call it for quite a long period to come, and that is where we are at the moment. I think, honourable members, Chairperson, I'm done with my presentation. Thank you.
Okay,
Chair,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. The CFO will make
Yes.
inputs necessary after your presentation. I am not limiting you to time because I just want members to get information and have enough time to digest this, and we'll have to give them enough time also to engage on the presentation. Honorable Mabi is still struggling. Honorable Boroto, do we have Honorable Boroto on the line?
No,
Cindy?
Chair.
No,
Mhm.
Chairperson.
Because I see her number appearing here. I don't know if maybe it's someone using her phone, but I don't think so. Okay, it's fine. Have other members who have joined us? I'm sorry, CFO, to interrupt you. Do we have any members who have joined us?
No, we've got no additional members, just one additional apology from Mr. Julius Memahlangu.
Oh, what? Okay.
But still got the same members. We can still continue. We just don't have quorum to adopt anything.
We hope we have started. And still consult also with the content advisor. While the CFO is making presentation, please consult whether we can take decisions in today's meetings. But it's fine. Let the CFO make additions. CFO, over to you.
Yes, thanks, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable members. I won't take much of your time. In terms of finance, the only thing I want to raise is that the total budget request for the 2021-22 financial year for Parliament is 3001.283 billion against the indicative amount of 2916.842 billion, resulting in a shortfall of 84.441 million. Also, I would like to indicate that the budget I'm referring to, the 2.96 indicative amount, is still indicative for now. It might change drastically during the adjustment budget, depending on the financial situation of the country. If nothing improves, this budget will definitely be reduced further, which means somewhere during November or after the adjustment budget, we'll have to come back and revise our budget, which will also affect our APP. That's what I wanted to indicate. Okay. But if I might also indicate the audit process as requested. The audit process of the 2019-20 financial year is still in progress. Under normal circumstances, this was supposed to have been concluded by 31st of July. Parliament was supposed to be having the audit report by now. The first delay was from Parliament side because we were supposed to submit the annual financial statement to the AG for auditing by the 31st of May. That has been delayed by a month. We only submitted our financial statement on the 30th of June due to the impact of the COVID pandemic. One of the areas which made Parliament to not submit a financial statement was the request from political parties represented in Parliament, because political parties were supposed to audit their books and submit the financials to Parliament, for Parliament to include in the financial statement of Parliament. During level 4 and 5, political parties could not travel to provinces, mainly those who have got offices in provinces, to be able to do their financial statements. Then there was a 1 month delay from Parliament. Then we submitted our financials on the 30th of June instead of the 31st of May, which is a month delay. AG was also supposed to audit the financials 2 months after we have submitted. They were supposed to issue the report on the 31st of August, which is on Monday. They've given us the revised timelines. They won't be able to meet their deadlines also. On the 7th of September, they will only give us the draft management letter. Then on the 15th of September, they will give us the final management letter and the draft audit report. They'll only be able to issue the final audit report on the 30th of September. So you can tell that now there's 2 months delay. 1 month delay was from Parliament side, another month delay was from the AG side. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you, honorable members.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Jawa?
No, I was just saying to Chairperson, we finished with our presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay, Cindy, I hope you were able to assist me with the identification of members who wants to speak.
Yes, Chair. We've not had any hands, but members can use the hand raising tab on their apps, or they can just announce themselves. But I've got 4 members from the NA, and we've got 3 members from the NCOP present. Member Shangu, there's also just one other thing. Our meeting is live, so the broadcasting team have requested that members, when they speak, should please just switch on their cameras.
Okay, members, let's switch on our cameras as and when we speak, but you can just mute your mic and switch on your camera, all of us. But I will apologize. I will not be able to switch on my camera because I'm nursing the situation here in terms of my connectivity, so that it can have more power. Can members please identify by raise of hand or writing on the chat? Those who want to, who have questions or who have comments, please. Honorable members. Am I muted? Oh, no, I'm not muted. Can you hear me, members?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I have honorable T and honorable. Who else?
Singh.
Hi.
Yes, honorable. I noted you. Hi. Members, I think with these 3, depending on the number of questions you have, we will have a second part. Honorable team, you can lead. You can start with your questions.
Thank you,
And switch
Chair.
on your camera, sir.
I will switch my camera on, but I don't know how good the quality is. Chair, it's a very simple question. In the report presented relating to the achievement of targets, it was pointed out that under the empowerment of members, that although there was disruption because of the disruption to academic institutions, all members of parliament and I think legislatures were registered. Well, that in fact is not the case. As I think the chair and myself, just as two examples, will attest, we attempted and asked the department again and again and again. In fact, we directed questions to Mr. Mavoso, to Matlodi Nawa, to try and get those of us who are trying to complete our VIT studies registered, and that still has not happened. So I would like the relevant officials just to go and review that and in fact comment as to why those of us who are already historical students at those institutions have not been able to continue with our registrations for our next phase. And I'm talking here about the master section of the public leadership course. But if I'm one example that simply cannot get an answer out of on this program for an entire year, or for the purpose of this year, after passing my last stage, there must be others at other legislatures and in fact also in Parliament that are simply not being able to register. So it is incorrect to say that everybody is registered for the courses that they want to pursue. Thank you.
Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Hope you can hear me, and thank you for the presentations. Did you say something? Can you hear me?
Oh, you can go on. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentations that were made. I will ask questions on both presentations, but I want to start off with the first quarter performance 2020-21. And just to say, Acting Secretary of Parliament, I had written a number of questions, but the answer to those questions came in your last slide, which you didn't send us. But now which we've seen, where I wanted to know what was the actual expenditure in the first quarter compared to our budgets. Now we expect targets not to be met because COVID came upon us, and we expect targets not to be met. But I'm trying to understand that you made a presentation which showed similar figures in terms of what expenditure. But when you came to the actual, there were differences because it showed significant savings on the 536 million rand budget. Now, if that is the trend that we are looking at, what I said in the last meeting, that COVID has its good and its bad. The good is that it'll be able to allow us to catch up in balancing our budget and not being in a shortfall position, unless there are additional expenses that amount to a significant amount of money that we require because of the circumstances we find ourselves in. So I just want to know if that kind of thinking is still correct, and because the actuals show a significant decrease in the amount of money we spend. I just wanted to also on that one ask a question related to, I think it was slide 13 on projections. Because I see 580 million rand is projected as a saving, right, overall. And then if we look at slide 33, international relations and protocols, it is shown in your document as if everything will be spent. Now, I can't see us spending all those monies on international relations protocol because we are not traveling. And that was on slide 33, I think. So That is my comments on the first quarter, but to acknowledge the significant savings that we have had. Then if I go to the 21-22 APP and budget, which I agree with the programs. It's forward-looking, it's good, it's clean, it's neat. But I'd just like to know, as statisticians and others would say, on what assumptions are we basing our plan? Assumptions being, where do we think we're going to find ourselves as Parliament, as a functioning Parliament, with COVID, being the thing that has come in between? So what assumptions are we looking at? Are we assuming that all members of Parliament return to a certain stage, will return to normal by a certain time, etc., etc.? Because it is your assumptions that's going to impact on your plan moving forward. Then on the financial statements, the Auditor General, that's fine. I just want to know if all parties did eventually meet the deadline to submit audited statements on the constituency allowances and other allowances that they receive. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
I don't know if
I'm still here. Thank you, Honorable Singh. Honorable Khai, you are next.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. No, thank you very much for the opportunity. And let me also thank the Acting Secretary and the team for the presentation. Chair, just on there are a few areas just on quarterly report, first quarter report. I very much agree with the suggestion by the Secretary on the issue of members' satisfaction, that whilst there will be a company that will be conducting the survey, I would support also the internal survey processes. For me, even if they could be on quarterly basis, so that on quarterly basis, there's this survey that is done to members, so that by the time then the company comes in, you are able to collate the results of what transpired. Given that if it's annual, we are here in Parliament, I would say it's not 5 years, it's less than 5 years, because the last year it's election year. So that means that survey will be only conducted for 3-year period. So, but it will be better if it's on quarterly basis, so that there's also improvement on some of the areas that have been highlighted by members during that particular financial year. So I very much support that. But also on the population participating in Parliament processes, business processes, I know that we have adopted the current APP, but maybe when we look at the 21-22 APP, perhaps we should consider also not to have it as an annual target, but instead as a quarterly target, so that also we monitor and also make improvement immediately on those areas. I'm worried about the issue that is raised with regard to the Hansard service, the challenges that are experienced there. But what is also disappointing is that it looks like there are no solutions that are being proposed to address those particular issues that are identified as challenges. Just one issue that the Secretary also raised in terms of ensuring that there's a screening of those who come to work. There's something that that they talk about the symptom checker. If I can be clarified with regard to that. I'm raising it so that it could be something that could also be shared with the other sectors as well. If you go to the airport, for example, you only fill in that form, and also they check your temperature. That's all. But I see here in Parliament, there's something called symptom checker. So I need the details around that particular issue. Chair, with regard to the APP, perhaps firstly, what I would like to suggest, Chair, to you and also your co-chair, is that, I don't know whether it happens in the National Assembly, but I know in the NCOP, we usually have what is called the Committee Strategic Planning Session. First, we start with the NCOP, Strategic Planning Session, Annual Strategic Planning Session, and followed by Committee Strategic Planning Session. So the Select Committee would be able to have their own strategic plans that they will use as a basis of oversight when they meet with the departments and the entities of departments. I think we're missing that with regard to the joint standing committees, particularly this one. I think the Parliament should also, whilst Parliament budgets for such strategic plans of select committees, I think it should also budget for joint standing committees of Parliament, so that when we come here, the chairperson, for our oversight work on the financial management of Parliament, we move from our own plan as a committee. So I want to suggest that the Parliament should also take that into account, so that we are thorough in terms of the work that we're doing. Otherwise, for now, we just depend on the Secretariat and the team reporting to us. We don't have our own strategic plan of how we oversight and interact with the Parliament leadership. Also on the performance, I see that now PBO will be, as we've always been told, that it will be having its own, it will be kind of a standalone entity. I don't know when are we going to have then a similar arrangement in terms of the 21-22 annual performance plan. I know that the budget has not yet been allocated to them, but I think we should be starting those processes of developing an annual performance plan for the PBO. And also, with regard to the Treasury Advice Office, if at least, because we raised this when we were dealing with the APP, with the Executive Authority, I think it's about time that we are told exactly when this office is going to be established. Chair, I like the idea with regard to the research, the plan that is talking about. Because I'm really not happy with the research work for committees in particular. Because for me, what is happening there is just a summary of the documents of departments, not a research, just a summary, a repeat of what the department has given to us. Maybe here and there, you are reminded about what the department said last time, whether their budget is in line with the plans, those kind of things. So it's more of an information, not a research work. And therefore, I want to add to this research plan that we need a thorough research, so that as I serve in the Select Committee, for example, that is responsible for employment and labor, given that we passed as Parliament the national minimum wage, we need a research therefore that will be able to say what is the impact of the national minimum wage, that kind of a research, but also with other departments. When the department says this is a policy that we've developed. This is a policy that we're implementing. We need, therefore, a research that will be able to say, what is the impact of this policy in Limpopo, in Northwest, in Eastern Cape, in KZN? That kind of a research work. But also, I take the note of the fact that there will also be partnership that will be developed. Where there is no capacity in Parliament, we will be able to use research institutions, whether in universities and so forth. So I think even there should be a clear a framework so that committees know that they can, in certain circumstances, go out and source this research work, including commissioning some research institutions to conduct work if there's no capacity in Parliament with regard to those areas. I'm still worried, Chair, about this issue. We raised it in the last meeting, that of our people being able to access what is happening in Parliament through the television channels. I know for other things, Parliament is able to source donations for work of Parliament, including capacity building for members. I don't know if Parliament should not explore funding, maybe even if it's foreign funding, for that area where people are able to access the channels of SABC in particular, so that what happens in Parliament, everybody will be able to know it, to know and understand it. But the issue of the survey, going back to that issue of satisfaction, because my understanding, Ms. Chair, is that this satisfaction is also around the service charters, if I'm not mistaken, those areas. Now, if those areas are measured on quarterly basis, it would then make sense as well to measure then the satisfaction as well on quarterly basis, just to emphasize the point I had raised earlier, Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Chairperson?
You can go on, Honorable Matwe. I think the chairperson also has a problem of connection.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm saying, Honorable Khai, I think when we talk about the funding, we are expecting funding without conditions because you don't want to be cornered. I'm just saying it in passing. And truly speaking, all this, most of the issues that we members have raised have been raised before. Like the acting secretary said, we have had discussions on most of these issues. Honorable Peggy, I know he did report that he has bereavement, but there's no official apology. The whip, are you in? Do you want to say something if you are in?
Chair.
Cindy?
Chair.
Yes.
Shango? Yeah, I was next on the questions. Please don't forget about me. On input.
Who's that, Cindy?
It's Member Otwe, Ms. Mahlangu.
Oh, okay. Okay, Mauto, you can come in while we're still checking the whip. Okay, you can come in, madam.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chairperson and the Acting Secretary of Parliament and the CFO. I'm just having challenges with your first presentation that you made, Ma'am Baby. Your quarterly report, because if you look at it, what you've sent us, I'm sure Honorable Singh will agree with me on this one. Your budget is equal to actuals throughout, and so effectively it's not helping us except
just to check on the targets that you've achieved. But financial wise, it's really not helping. I battle to, there's nothing to engage. The only last page which you sent today is the one that you would have wanted to engage, because it's at least saying something. And the introduction of projections, I think we are swapping projections with actuals. My understanding is that you've got the firm budget that gets firmed up, and then you'll then have projections to say, with the budget that you've already firmed up, what's your projection for the next month, just to check your progress. And then the actuals are actuals. Actuals is what you've spent. So I want to be clarified. Is that the understanding? Because when you are introducing it, it's like you are vice versa in actuals and projections. The projections can't be something that you spend. So what you've spent is actually actuals. And projection is what do you intend to spend based on your budget, which would have been baselined. So I'm moving on that's slide 8 and 9 of your presentation. I have not had enough time to look at your last slide that indicates actuals versus what's been budgeted for, because I would have wanted to see what has been the impact of COVID on the budget for Q1. For example, we know that for a significant amount of time, we're sitting at home. I mean, I've not been to Parliament since March. So, and I know that there's a budget allocated to me for flying down to Parliament and airport transfers and all those things. So, and I'm not the only one. I'm sure of the 400 members, possibly 300 of us, we've been online. So what has been the impact thereof? So I'll entertain it later. Maybe if you can send us that last slide, and then we can then take it from there. I know that we don't have any other meeting this term. We'll possibly have another meeting next time, but please, maybe in future, send us that information in full so that we can interrogate it. And if you look at your, there's a target that indicates that on ICT there was an overspend. Now, can we get clarity of what was the overspend on about? And also, I welcome the survey that is going to be introduced, because sometimes it takes a lot of time for members to get their tools of trade, more so that Parliament has been informed that so-and-so will be coming on board. And therefore, you would think that we work in an integrated office where information flows, that one member resigned from the EFF and there's the anticipation of another member replacing, and therefore there'll be a laptop, cell phone, and iPad needed. It took me over 4 months to get my laptop in Parliament. I was sworn in November, and I think I got my laptop, maybe not 4 months, but rather 3 months. And I know that I've got new members as well who were just sworn in now, and it took a significant amount of time for them to get through. So the survey will really help us, and but we'll dwell more on the survey when we are at the point of now sourcing that company that is going to help us with the survey. And CFO mentioned that the political parties asked for an extension. I want to put it on record that the EFF submitted the financials at the end of May. So we were well on time, and we did not ask for any extension. And in actual fact, it would have been wrong to effectively extend the deadline to specific parties without knowledge. I mean, the same applied to even IEC. We submitted our financials on time, but when the request was put forward from other political parties, it was made public. So why is it that Parliament just decided to extend the submission, and now we sit in a situation where we don't have audited financial statements now because of our own late submissions? And of course, we understand the COVID thing, but it can't be an excuse, really. I have a problem with anything that says goods and services, and I think I shared this sentiments as well in the previous meeting, that we've got significant, huge amount of budget that's been budgeted for under goods and services. Really, it doesn't sit well with me, because that's where things are hidden, and that's where we've got a loophole of things that are just sneaking in and being pushed as if they are goods and services. I want us to expand on that, goods and services, and so that we all know what goods and services are we talking about. Why can't they be explicitly explained and defined? That what is it? And then in terms of APP, looking at where we are right now as a country and this COVID, I think it's important to, even besides the conditions, that situation we find ourselves in, I think it's just important that when you craft a strategy, there should be highlighted assumptions that you make, so that we get to understand that your strategy is based on what assumptions, and if those assumptions then become problematic, then they become a risk, and then the issue is how do we then mitigate that risk. So the strategy is good looking on paper, but the assumptions will help you to quickly in advance see that there'll be challenges here and there, and then you can try to come up with mitigating factors to make sure that those assumptions do not become the risk, but they can easily collapse your strategy. So if we can be abreast with what the assumptions are, and on your strategy also, you're talking about in terms of public involvement, program 2, the delivery of public education via visual platforms and e-hearings and e-petitions. Colleagues, we are serving 56 million people in South Africa, and majority of them do not have access to social media. Do not have access. My mother is 68 years old. She does not know how to operate a laptop, besides the fact that she's a retired teacher. So how are we then going to access those people? And we must just think about how this will impact. I do know that we live in the fourth industrial revolution, but that does not mean that we need to exclude our people. We need to look at our environment and say, is this feasible? Is this not feasible? I mean, right now we can't even conduct the land hearings via visual platforms because it is such an important aspect of our constitution. But we do know that people don't have access. People are suffering. They don't have bread to put on the table. So where will they get money to buy data to be able to be logged onto a Zoom where they don't even have laptops or iPads? Our kids at school, the public schools, they're struggling to get those tools of trade. So my appeal is let's really understand the situation we're working in. And also on the issue of public involvement, I strongly believe that we should have an SABC channel that is broadcasting the parliament programs. And why I'm saying this, and I know that Mom Baby will jump and say it's for free in DSTV, but essentially what we're saying is that our people must go and buy or subscribe to the DSTV channel. That's a marketing strategy of the DSTV, basically, to say, let's be the one exclusively showing parliament programs in that way. And then we will say it's for free, but it's not, because people are subscribing to DSTV. Is not for free. But if it was in SABC, one, you will be then forcing the 56 million people to watch your own state-owned broadcaster. That's one. So that will increase your viewers on SABC. So I honestly want to push that we should, in the next financial year, move out of DSTV. Whether it's free or not, it's fine. It can remain there, but let's have a parliament also running on SABC and see how that will motivate people to pay for TV licenses to watch parliament. And then the last one, Chair, is on the next steps on the APP. I see you've got a roadmap. Oh, before that one, there's a roadmap of where we are as Parliament currently in terms of the technology and where the future should look like. I welcome that because it is. I welcome that, and my issue is when do we plan to move Parliament from the stage that we are in now to the future that we want to see? So if you can have timelines there of all those deliverables that you want to achieve, your your converged content, your known social media and all that. So when do we plan to do that? The last one is on the next steps. Who are the key stakeholders that you want to engage? You're saying you're going to do road shows and further consultation with you, and by when? And then in terms of the implementation itself as well, your strategic initiatives, your alliance structures, when do you plan to have all this in place to make sure that your strategy becomes a success? I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I thought members, I will give you a second bite after responses, but time does not seem to be in our favor because we have given them so much work to do, and we want them to give comprehensive answers that will empower us and help us. And from my side, there's something that the CFO have said, and the latter speaker, Honorable Mauto, said on the issue of the late submission of the financials. And this reminds me of another session that I had in another responsibility where I was on top of the municipalities, whereby I can't understand a municipality which cannot submit financial statements, annual financial statements. Really, having a CFO, you know your budget cycles, you know what to do, when to do, how to do it. And if you are late by a month, it gives me a problem. If as Parliament we are having such a problem, then it gives me a problem. I'm very much concerned. But also, Honorable Tim, on this issue of the students and the vets, the capacity building, I think we must leave it as of now and take it out of the meeting, because I think last time is it Mr. Mavoso or the acting secretary did report about it, but we said there are categories of problems, and we need one-on-one engagement with the leadership of Parliament on these categories, because it's not only you and me. There are several members from different political parties who are affected by this issue. So my fear also is that there's going to be, it looks like there are also engagement between Parliament and universities in as far as online learning. And my fear is that a decision will be reached without having been consulted as affected people. I don't know. Maybe there are consultations through the whips of the parties. It could be possible, but I'm just saying it will be better if the said people, members of Parliament, have a say, hear from them, what is it, and other views. And one day I said, I made myself as a living testimony to say from this program of FACE, because it has empowered me where I was making most. But I want to agree with the members who are talking about the research and the impact. Honorable High, in everything that we are doing, whether it's the APPs, whether the policies and whatever, if we say these plans that we have put in place, these policies or these targets are achievable, my view is that we should look at the impact. There should be an impact assessment. If Parliament has paid money to take me to school at VETS and paid everything for me, they should be able to assess me if these things are helping. They should be able to do impact assessment, that there is an impact. These courses are having an impact in terms of the work that I'm doing. But also, I for one, I have some other things. Honorable Tim is talking about some who wants to further their studies to doing masters, some wants to do something else. And one day I said, we are not looking beyond 5 years because nothing is confirmed. We are deployed for 5 years, we are not employed. So we are also preparing ourselves for life after Parliament. So that is what I want to put to the table and hand over to Honorable Beggy. I'm told the whip has left. He did indicate that he has a bereavement in the family. He has left. I will request the acting secretary and the team to respond to the issues as raised by the members. But Honorable Tim and I think Mavuso, if it's Mavuso or Dube, we need to have some sessions, if not the acting secretary, so that we can also pave a way on how are we going to make sure that other members from who are new or who have been there and who have different views are able to present their views to you. Over to you, acting secretary.
Thanks, Chairperson. I think you're right on the issue of training. We should have a separate discussion, indeed, where we're going to even look at what the strategy talks about, continuous training that's not necessarily dependent on the big institutions, but that can be done by some service providers. I will share the responses with my colleagues as CFO, but let me start off. Honorable Mauto, you're correct. The way we presented is indeed we have to, normally you would get the budget for the quarter, and then in your OPP you will have your projections that you have to reconcile against expenditure against the budget that you have. So naturally, because we don't have a linear process of budget and expenditure, if you had projected that you're going to be paying a certain service by a particular point into your third month, it must show even in your trend analysis. So that's correct what you're saying. Yes, I did say when I present that there's nothing untoward, there is nothing too exciting about the current expenditure as we've given you in this report, primarily because, as we say, that it's only after on the 30th of June or July when the minister came to do the adjustment, special adjustment. So in the next presentation, you will definitely receive an analysis of expenditure against the projections, whether we are underspending or overspending, and tracked according to the quotas that are allocated as per what we asked for from the budget. On the matter of goods and services, I remember you said that we'll provide you a cost center because at an operational level, there is a breakdown of line by line cost against goods and services where there's accommodation, there is transport, there is office expenditure, and all of those in the breakdown in terms of our items, in terms of the cost centers that we have. And we will share that with yourselves when we do a budget analysis, when we report in the next quarter two. And in the meantime, in between, as I was saying, in between, what we will do for yourselves, because there was not enough spending during the first quarter due to COVID, we are going to have to submit to yourselves now, as the CFO, I'm sure he will say, by when are we going to be certain that we can see the movements in this current budget that's appropriated, which then looks at the first quarter and the second quarter of spending. You spoke about assumptions. Yes, we submitted a narrative of the APP. And firstly, I think page 29 and page 35 of the narrative does show us the scenarios and the implications of risk that we have actually looked at in case certain things happen. And I'll let Ravi talk to it a little bit about it, because we definitely have put the assumptions there. That also answers Honorable Singh's points there. And then, of course, with respect to communication, I agree with you. Currently, the Parliamentary Communication Services is putting together a segmentation methodology that would then look at, indeed, how we access communities in deep rural areas. We do have a data that we get from the EMPS, which is SAF, which shows us even the preferred consumption. And if you look at our Ipsos Machina study, it does show us what the population of South Africa prefers to receive information on. Our Parliamentary Communication Services use community radio stations. We've got 79 community radio stations that reach over about at least, I think, between 15 million to 20 million South Africans. However, some community radio stations, because they're dependent on connectivity, they will definitely be on, they will be in metro areas or semi-urban areas. But we're doing a segmentation, and that segmentation will actually ensure that our communication targets those people. Of course, what is going to be important, honorable members, is this committee to really look at the usage of the PCOs. We have the constituency offices. If constituency offices becomes hubs of communications and interface with population, indeed, honorable members will reach the population of South Africa even more by using those. But like I say, we actually do have our program, and there's a communication strategy that is being developed by the Parliamentary Communication Services colleagues who are looking at how we're going to segment communities. It is going to be a challenge, I agree. We can't go only for e-parliament, we must find creative ways of allowing for interfaces with the members of between the members of the public and members of parliament. So a lot of constituency work, hence even our strategy, we're talking about the times, there must be political decisions around integrated programs, committee work. How do you want to conduct your plenary, your committee work? Should you have more time in the constituencies and less time coming onto the precinct? And I think COVID begins to dictate that direction more than any time. So there are certain things that definitely have to be driven by members and political matters that we as officials can just propose, and members can say, this is the direction we want to take. We want to concentrate largely on making sure that you supply information that will enable us to interface with our communities in using the PCOs, because in our research, I'm sure with time I will share with you, we can even send it to you. There's evidence that a lot of South Africans do not know, first, who their MP is, secondly, where their PCO is. And they do say, I would prefer to receive information on the work of Parliament in my PCO because of proximity. So these are some of the things that members have definitely raised. As for the budget breakdown and so on, we will definitely look at that and bring it to yourself. But I'm sure CFO would like to talk on that matter and also on the audit matters. And then Ravi will talk on the scenarios that we have had. And then we can talk a little bit about Honorable Khai's points that he raised. Ravi, on the scenarios, please, yes, as per what we have in the document. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I know the two honorable members brought up this question. So I want to show members one of the things that we did even pre-COVID. We recognize, usually the frameworks from DPME, National Treasury, etc., do not go significantly into scenario planning, and that we really needed to subsidize the planning process with a way of looking at scenario planning. So the thing is, we did that from the start. Obviously, when COVID hit as well, it became a significant portion of that scenario planning. So we took assumptions, and I want to say to you that there are both external assumptions and internal assumptions which went into that. Some of the broad external assumptions were things like, what kind of GDP growth would we see? What kind of major variables would we see in the country, and how would it impact Parliament? Then the other ones, that the internal impact variables that we looked at, it would be from, what is the average age in Parliament? How are we likely to be hit by comorbidities, things like that. So a lot of things went into, there's a lot of assumptions built into those scenarios. However, the way we do see it is that obviously with significant changes, we've got a process of what we call strategy review. So, for example, there is a strategy review that we do after tabling off of another adjustments budget in October, because the way we see it, the tax base of the country would be known. We do see significant budgetary impacts, which would be announced by the Minister of Finance. So when we look at those assumptions as well, we also look at trigger points when we should trigger a strategy review. So we are constantly monitoring these assumptions. And I think another thing to tie in, even at the onset of COVID, we were doing, was even a COVID task team where we looked at scenarios and where we were updating that quite frequently on the potential assumptions, where we even assumed how long could we stay in level, in level 4, how long could we stay certain levels. But broadly speaking, the thing is, we see one scenario where, it's a very optimistic scenario where COVID could play out over the next 6 months. Another scenario where it could be a 12 to 18-month period, and another deep impact scenario of about a 3-year period of impact, because that would affect us very differently. So can assure that some of the things that members mentioned is happening. We do look at those variables. And also to talk about the risks, one of the things brought up was the risk. So if you look, there is within the SMG space, within my area, risk management sitting there, and we do look at what we call strategic risks. So risks which impact the implementation of the strategic plan, and it's something that we constantly do. So the initial identification, etc., is all put in the APP and the strategic plan. However, there are strategic risk registers that we keep updated on a quarterly basis, which is looking at the things which impact the implementation of strategy. Hopefully, honourable members, I've answered your question around our process. Thanks.
Yeah, I think there was also one element that Honourable Mauto spoke about. It's the steps going forward. What we then do, because this is an APP of the institution, the strategy and governance unit is going to facilitate the various operational plans of the various divisional managers. And it is in that way you have the timelines of every target that we have actually shared with yourselves, and the details of the various milestones. So that sits at an operational plan, and we definitely have that ongoing. That is why we're showing the plan there. But what's important about this is there is going to be a need where this committee discusses your oversight plan, you discuss the research plan, and public participation plan, because that has to have the input of members. And I think Honorable Khai spoke well about it, to say the NCOP committees do the plan, they go review, and we haven't found that with the NA. But the NCOPs, they have a time where they strategize, where they come back and review how they've implemented, and they plan and they revisit their plans. So in that, one is able to look at exactly what impact they have, and whether at the level of a program has there been targets met by the members. So that's done quite nicely in NCOP. In NA, one hasn't identified that, but it's something that we'll do. We'll definitely it has to be done. How maybe the committee will have to have a discussion higher above the administration, where you engage the political office bearers. CFO, you want to come in here, and then I'll deal with the other points from Honorable Khai.
Yes, thanks, Acting Secretary, and afternoon again, honorable members. The Acting Secretary has talked about the issue of the budget being the same with the actual for all the financial, for the quarter. Maybe I must just stress again on this one. When we started the financial year, the Executive Authority indicated the need for them to influence how budget of Parliament is allocated for this financial year. Then we had 2 budget with them where they were guiding us on how the budget must be allocated. The last budget was on the 29th of May, which means by then we are supposed to have been able to submit the budget for approval. Just before we do that, there was a communication from National Treasury that there will be a special budget adjustment where they will have to reduce budget for all of us to respond to the COVID pandemic. For Parliament, the indication was that they had to reduce our budget by 346 million. Then there were engagement with National Treasury until they reduced our budget by 80 million. Then after the Minister of Finance tabled the special adjustment budget on the 24th of June, that's when then we were able to submit the budget for approval to the executive authority for allocation. That's when all business units now were written to indicate their allocation for the year and requested to submit their projections going forward. So for the first quarter, no unit was having a budget. So whatever the budget the unit has spent, we just took it as a budget because no one was having a budget for the first quarter. The other slide, which the acting secretary talked about, the very last slide, maybe we can just flag that slide there. The very last slide, which will be having 28, 19, 20, and 2020, 21. That is the screen, the slide which is showing the impact of COVID-19. Cindy, can we have that slide on the screen? The very last slide. No, on the first quarter, not on the budget, on the first quarter report.
The one that came last today, Cindy.
The very, very last slide there.
Yeah.
Yes, this one. So this is the slide which is showing the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. If you can see the second column is saying 2019-20. The next column is saying 2020-21. There's no budget here. Here we are saying for the first quarter of 2019-20, we have spent 624 million. But for the first quarter, due to COVID-19, we have spent 536 million. We are saying we have spent 88 million for the first quarter compared to the first quarter last year. So this is the one which is showing the impact of COVID. That's why if you recall, when we presented the budget for the 2021, we even said no, the 80 million budget reduction won't have an effect on Parliament's operation because already for the first quarter, we have got a shortfall if you compare to last year of 88 million. So the 80 million will be covered without causing any disruption to Parliament's operations. The next question was the issue of the political parties, whether they've all submitted their financial statements. Up to yesterday, we had the two political parties which has not yet submitted the financial statements. I won't mention their names here, honorable members, unless I'm requested to do so. What is happening, these two political parties, we have not yet paid them for the second quarter transfers. Because what happened for the first quarter, we paid all the political parties their transfers. Payments from the second quarter is dependent on when they submit their annual financial statements. So these two parties, we have not yet transferred their allocation for the second quarter. That will only be done when they submit their annual financial statements. The submission of the financial statements by the EFF by 31st of May. Yes, honorable members, I agree that the EFF and one other party did submit their financials by end of May. When we received this financial statement, we were all surprised how the EFF and this other party, maybe they should have shared with the other parties, managed to submit their financials because under lockdown level 4 and 5, traveling were not allowed. So unless if the EFF and this other party can say they don't have offices in other provinces, will still be a mystery how they manage to submit their financial statement. But that's not an issue. Then the request to extend the submission deadlines. After some political parties, I won't mention which, submitted that request and indicated the issue of the COVID. What happened as management? Yes. So sorry, honorable members. My apologies. My apologies.
Because you spoke well, Matomonguru, you don't want to mention unless you're asked to. And we didn't ask you to name and shame. And now you're talking about, you are mentioning EFF and this other party. And then anybody can make a conclusion. The two parties that we're talking about, the latest is EFF and another. And somebody might be tempted to say, then mention everybody, whoever is affected. And we don't want us to take our meeting to that direction.
Already tempted. Honorable Chairperson, I'm mentioning the EFF because the honorable member indicated that the EFF submitted on the 31st of May. That's why I mentioned the EFF. I could not have mentioned the name, but the honorable member from the EFF said the EFF submitted on the 31st of May. That's why I'm saying EFF and the other party.
Yeah, we are not the two that have not submitted. Thank you, CFO.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you for guidance.
Then as the accounting officer wrote to the executive authority for them to extend the submission. Hello, Chairperson.
I am the chairperson. I'm directing the meeting. And I'm requesting that don't allow side issues to misdirect you.
Thanks, Chairperson.
I just want to ask so that we don't have other issues that will get us to another direction that we don't want to go. Thank you. Continue.
Yes, I understand.
And
yes.
Go back.
Then we are saying the accounting officer wrote to the executive authority for them to approve the submission of the financial statement by political parties on the 30th of June instead of the 31st of May, because the accounting officer could not approve that one. Then the last question was the issue of the details on goods and services. Yes, honorable members, it's not only on goods and services. Even we can look at compensation of employees. There's a lot of items there under compensation of employees. During the 5th Parliament, there was a similar request. So in your pack, it will be unfortunate if in your pack those details are not there. What we do, because we cannot put it in this presentation, we submit an addendum which will have the details of all those line items there. We can't put it in this presentation, but it's in the pack. If it's not there in the pack, that should have been on an oversight, because we did submit the details of those line items, which will indicate when you say combination of employees, what is that? Goods and services, what are the line items? So we'll just check if maybe it was not submitted in your pack, then we'll just ensure that going forward, it's included in your pack. Thanks, honorable members and acting secretary.
Thank you. Chairperson, we also want to add, and I know you raised it quite sharply, the delay in the financials. You know, when the notice came for all departments and they were given an extension, obviously our act doesn't allow for it. We've got a different act. But at that point in time, I think CFO has omitted a very important point. It's the first time we have had to get an actuarial scientist to assess the correctness of the exit, the gratuity, you know, office exit gratuity, loss of office gratuity. So that company that we had actually appointed in level 5, as per the strict restrictions, couldn't actually even come onto the precinct. That's one. The second one was the assessment of asset management, because assets you have to go office by office. I mean, whilst we're trying to automate it, we still are very like Ravi's slideshow. We are a bit backwards because we do a few things manual, yet Oracle does have a module of automated asset verification. So we couldn't even do the asset verification. And indeed, the FMPPLA does say, in case this doesn't happen, the accounting officer has to inform the executive authority, which we did, and we also informed the the audit committee. Coming back, what we are waiting for is we argued and presented to the AG that this was not deliberate. We got our legal colleagues in Parliament who wrote us to say, look, this was not deliberate. We have submitted. The problem is you can't submit financials that have got misstatements. That's even worse. You know, rather have a discussion. It's only yesterday that we met with the AG to even say, how are you going to treat this? Because this is not a deliberate making of Parliament. So you cannot issue it as a matter that is going to impact on the outcomes of the audit. However, we're still fighting that battle because, unfortunately, the irony is that they themselves are impacted on by the very environment that we were impacted on at that point in time. Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to deal with a few things that Honorable Khai spoke about. The following, that's noisy. And the following, indeed, the research, what we would like is the research heard, the DM of research already has pulled together a draft research plan for Parliament, and obviously that will address some of the matters that Honorable Khai is talking about. And in it, we're trying to really make sure that the work between the research and content advisors is seamless. And you can see in our approach now, in terms of the program structure, we're talking about shared services. We want to pull together all the resources that support members in terms of knowledge and information that includes in it primary and secondary research. Indeed, we're going to be looking at that, and he will be presenting a research plan guided by Mr. Paso, who's the acting deputy secretary currently. And out of that, members should actually be able to interface with that plan, and it's a plan that would inform the research, how it's done, how we collect it, where we can buy data that is ready. And that division is also signing agreements with HSRC, Status A, and then the USB, which is the University of Stellenbosch, and of course other institutions that do produce research. With respect to Hansard, we agree with you, Honorable Khai. Tomorrow we have a meeting to look at all those areas. There is already a proposal on how we can mitigate the challenges that colleagues are facing in that area, because that area has always been very precinct and parliament bound. People have to be in rooms using certain technology in the houses, interpreting, translating, and producing Hansard. Now we have been impacted by COVID. Colleagues can't do that, and a lot of those have comorbidities, and our technologies are old. So we have mitigation, and in the next report, you will actually receive a mitigation on how we are addressing those weak areas, so we don't come back. But like I say, it's not retrospective, so we will not catch up with what we didn't do. But going forward, we'll be able to show meeting the targets properly. It does need a lot of modernization. The client satisfaction survey, we agree completely. We will ensure that we get our quarterly outcomes of the survey and profile it through this committee. Yes, Honorable Khai, the Treasury Advice Office, we've had interviews, we've had shortlisting, we've had an assessment, and we just didn't find the candidate. That being a new function that reports to the Executive Authority, we are on it. We're now going for talent search. PBO, that's a separate discussion that they will have to have with the Advisory Council that they report to and structure their APP going forward. And we know that we are going to be giving them the budget, like obviously the PBO doesn't have a vote, still has to have a budget from the baseline of Parliament. Chairperson, I think we have covered most of the matters, unless if we've omitted any other, but we will be guided by yourself. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Team Parliament. I think most of the issues, like I have said, that it's not for the first time we engage with this. It's not, the questions that we have raised are not also the first time that we raise them, the responses. But the more we engage on these issues, the more we become familiar and become comfortable with them and understand them more. Can I check with the members? Time is not on our side. Honorable Singh, are you fine?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. I think we've done. If there's anything else, we can always query it at some later stage. But thank you very much for the responses as well. Thank you. We hope to continuously save money to make it better to balance our budget and not ask for more money as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Ai?
Yeah, no, thanks.
Are you okay?
I think the only area is that one of a donation for a platform on SABC, if it's possible, but if not possible, that's still fine. But I was looking at the, this meeting is on 4/8 as well as on Facebook. I don't know if there's a way, I don't know much about technology. I don't know if there's a way of, especially with Facebook, I mean, the comments that are there are unpalatable. They got nothing to do with the committee itself. Others are advertising Bitcoin, others, all sort of comments. I don't know if there is a way of dealing with that. As I'm saying, I'm not, I don't know technology that much, but I was just checking if ICT would be able to assist with regard to that particular area. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. I think we can give them a part course to talk to communications as specialists to have a person who's managing that platform, because it needs to be managed. It can't be open for all and people start using it to advertise their businesses and stuff. It can't be.
No, Chair, if you allow me on that point, I think you're right. Actually, we do have a team of people who have to be dealing with social media. And that's the reason why their strategy is actually managing, has to manage protocols around our social media for Parliament, and have really trained people who have to use those platforms effectively. We'll definitely have that. On the matter of, I'm happy to say, Chair, if I was to say, we are currently, depending on Centec and the license, we currently have a team of experts, Ms. Moncho, their section managers, Mr. Veloano, and them working with DPW and multi-choice to establish a Parliament studio. They have been meeting until yesterday. We are hoping that in the next 6 months, we will have some good news to say. Parliament is also even training their own stringers, training their own communications hosts, and so on and so forth. Chairpersons of committees will be hosted in our studio, link it up with the GCI, as currently we do link up with the 120 studio. But there's a lot of progress on addressing the presence and the footprint of Parliament with respect to unmediated communication. So, and Honorable Khai, we definitely are looking at that, and we're hoping in 6 months we'll be telling a good story. But I'm told that there's also issues of license. And my colleagues are also telling me that they do actually give a lot of feed to the SABC radio stations. Sometimes it's just about interest. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Tim.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I know that you said we should take those issues relating to member development offline, and I'm happy with that. But can we just have some sort of commitment in the next week as to when we can set that up? Whether we have to set up a separate Zoom meeting or whatever the case may be, I'm more than happy to participate. But I think you're aware that we've tried to escalate this and still nothing is happening. So that engagement is necessary. So if we can just have some, maybe Cindy can set it up, whatever, but if maybe we could just have a firm commitment to that engagement, and it's not just something that's allowed to drift. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think that should be between upon you and me. I'm proposing to the committee that it should be upon you and me, so that we set up a meeting with the relevant authority, being the acting secretary and her relevant people in administration.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be in touch next week then.
Okay. Honorable Mautwa, are you fine with the answers?
Thank you, Chair. That will be all from my side. The way you're defending the two parties, I think it's the ANC that has not submitted.
I knew, Nalwe, same WhatsApp group, Nalwe. I knew, meeting. But I didn't have any information to confirm to you, Honorable Mauto. But the main thing is that in everything that I'm doing, I just don't want us to take our meeting to political fights. And if they mention EFF, I felt like some people will want something else to be said. Who is the other one, or make conclusions which might be wrong. So I didn't have any hidden agenda. I don't have any privileged information, Honorable Mautwa. But are you fine with the questions that you have answered? You have asked?
Yeah, I'm fine, Chair. We'll engage more with Mom Baby. It's fine.
Who did I leave out? No one. Honorable members, after who?
No one, Ms. Mahlangu. You've covered everybody.
Thank you. Honorable members, it's unfortunate that after having drafted this report, this program for this court this term, we have circulated to members in due time, and we have checked with members the availability of members. Some members have confirmed, but we do understand sometimes there are issues that they will make you not to come, but sometimes members decide to prioritize other things or don't say anything. It's very heartbreaking for me as chairperson, whereby you call a meeting and people don't even have a decency of apologizing. I don't take that very kind. And for those who are not well, I wish them well. We were expected to adopt this report, these two reports, the first quarter report and the APP, and then go to the minutes. But because we don't reach the quorum, Honorable Becky, as I said, he has left. As of now, we have 3 members. Oh, nice one. We have 3 members from NCOP as expected. And we have 3 members from the NA. We are, for a quorum, we are expected to have 5 members from NA and 3 from NCOP. So we don't reach the quorum, and therefore we cannot entertain the issue of adopting these items before us. I was going to propose, with your guidance, honorable members, that I remember the last time I communicated with you through the WhatsApp, I even suggested that why don't we have just 2 hours or an hour on a Sunday, because it's like Monday to Friday is impossible. Over the weekends, just allocate few hours for us to be able to meet and do what is expected of us. But I'll be guided by you, honorable members, and I'll also consult with the co-chairperson who tried everything possible and could not join the meeting, even after being assisted by the IT. We have to set another date whereby we are going to adopt these items and the minutes.
Chairperson?
Yes, Honorable Khai.
Can I suggest that you and the co-chairperson and maybe also work secretary, you look at the items that we will have, and maybe most meetings, other committees, they start from 9 in the morning until 9 in the evening. So, but also there are plenaries in between. I wanted to suggest maybe if you can look at us at this committee, starting a meeting, even if it's for 1 hour, from 8 to 9.
8 to 9.
8 to 9. Yes, but also even maybe we should be staggering our items throughout the week, if it's possible. Using the 8 to 9 hour. Maybe let's say on Tuesday we deal with the minutes or whatever that we can finish within 1 hour. And look at another, maybe the following day, Wednesday, take 1 hour. So if perhaps we can strategize our meeting in that fashion, because it's really going to be difficult to have. Because it looks like these joint steering committee meetings are really not priority. Priorities will be the portfolio committees and select committees. Yeah. So maybe I'm just throwing an idea that perhaps your co-chair could consider. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Honorable Khai. Who's next?
Chairperson Singh.
Yeah. Honorable Singh.
Yeah, Chairperson, I agree that we've got to find time to conclude our business. But perhaps, you know, the 8 to 9 won't work every day because on Thursdays we have programming committee that starts at 8:30. But let's find some time. But just probably as a reminder, I'm just looking at the program for next week for all our members that we are considering 2 reports of our committee, which will come up for debate in the House for declarations. So I just want committee members to look at that as well. I've been beginning to prepare my points for those declarations. And perhaps we must tell the chair that we can combine both, because one is a 2018-19 annual report. Cindy, I don't know how this comes up now on the order paper. And then one is the first quarter of 2019-2020. It's almost a year now that these items are appearing on the order paper for us to debate on the last day, which is the Thursday, the 3rd of September, before we break up for constituency period. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I hear you. Any other view?
Chair, I'm happy to work whenever we have to, but I know in KZN we get up very early in the morning because the sun gets us up early, so we can work early in the morning, no problem.
This is Zulu boy on my stoop is hammering me. I thought I'm better off with the other Zulu boy, Karim. Now it's you. Okay, honorable members, I think it's a progressive thing. I will consult. What's that, Mauto?
Yes. Chair, from our side, you are available.
Yes,
we are available anytime to have the meeting.
Okay. But I'll consult the co-chairperson, but we'll still have to consult with you again, because like Honorable Singh is saying, we have multiple responsibilities, most of us. Like myself and Khai, I think his suggestion is good, but it won't work every day, because like myself, I have other meetings that starts at 8 some days, or start at 8:30. So we'll have to see where we can amend and make sure that we prioritize sometimes, because the other thing I think that is discouraging people is that we seem not to take our committee serious, because it's always late when people are tired. So with those advices, honorable members, thank you so much, and I hope you will cooperate. And please talk to other members that you know are members of this committee to come and help, because together we will be able to assist each other and make Parliament work. If Parliament is not working, then everything else won't work until the municipalities. So we won't be able to do our oversight as committees outside this committee. So I'm appealing that let's encourage each other to be able to attend to these meetings. And thank you very much, Acting Secretary and your team Parliament. And I'm hoping that after adopting this report, going forward, we'll be discussing other new things, because I have realized that we are going round in circles. You are discussing one thing over and over and over again. So I think going forward, we will be able to discuss new things. And I wish you a blessed and safe weekend. Don't have parties, don't go to parties, weddings, don't travel if it's not necessary. Stay safe and keep your loved ones safe. Thank you very much. The meeting stands adjourned.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.